Hey guys, this is Andrew with High Level Reviews, and today I'd like to take a look at Legend of Legaia. The game was developed by Contrail and published by Sony, and it was released in North America in March of 1998. Unfortunately, Legend of Legaia managed to slip past a lot of people, perhaps most were waiting for Final Fantasy VIII, and is often regarded as an underappreciated gem. Its fighting system is usually its selling point. It was meant to feel more like a fighting game and has the player string together long and impressively devastating combinations. It's similar to Xenogears in a few meaningful ways without seeming like a cheap copy. In fact, this is a common occurrence in Legaia. Despite a pretty inventive mythology and story, there are plenty of aspects of the game that simply don't venture out too far from the standard formula. When ripped from its particular time and place and played in the modern era of gaming, it might seem too imitative to some, but the high points of Legaia quickly erase any doubt. From a story that deals often with death and unfolds layers of detail about the world as you progress, to an astounding amount of minor touches, both visually and orally, that enhance the core experience. Legend of Legaia, while clearly not carrying the name recognition of its counterparts and at times staying too close to the vest, is one of the better JRPGs. The story starts by focusing on Vaughn, a resident of Rim Elm. The citizens of his small town have taken refuge from the Mist, an unexplained phenomenon that corrupted the healthy and productive relationship humans had with Saru, which were objects that attached themselves to humans and bestowed fantastic powers and abilities. When the Mist came into contact with Saru, it drove them mad and transformed them into monsters that attacked humans. The Mist and the deranged Saru eventually find their way into Rim Elm. Vaughn retreats to a Genesis tree to find a raw Saru in it. Raw Sarus are unaffected by the Mist, bestow a great amount of power to an individual, and most importantly, want to work together with humans to rid the land of the Mist. He also discovers that Genesis trees eradicate Mist in a small area around the tree, saving the area from infestation. With his newfound power and knowledge, Vaughn departs determined to seek out more Genesis trees. Along the way, he picks up Noah, a feral child that is quite naive due to being raised by a Rasaru that attached itself to a wolf, and Gala, a terse monk that is expelled from his monastery for aligning with a Saru despite it being a Rasaru. The rest of the game is spent seeking out Genesis trees and, in typical JRPG fashion, solving some minor conflicts along the way. Though Legaia received a lot of unfair and unnecessarily harsh criticism of its story, it is true that it doesn't stray too far from the expected tropes. But as I mentioned previously, it does establish a complex and intriguing history and explores very dark themes with some mixed results. Noah's dreams of her parents are pretty heart-wrenching, despite the sometimes insufferable immaturity and incessant gesticulations Noah employs while conversing. The game can also be interpreted as a cautionary tale about the potential corruptibility of technology and our reliance on it. It's just that, while there are nuances to be explored and uncovered as you progress, it's never anything that a player familiar with RPGs hasn't experienced or couldn't have guessed was coming. To clarify, it's not that I anticipate being blown away by the plot of a game every single time I play a new RPG, it's just that this game was very safe and I get why some weren't interested. Though, without spoiling anything, I will say that there are some major twists late game that might change that perception, specifically involving Noah's lineage. These twists had varying effects though due to the inconsistent way in which characters are developed and the painfully cliché writing. Not that it had anything to do with the translation, it just wasn't superbly written. Simply put though, it's a far deeper world than most give it credit for, but it's quite clear where the focus on this game was. Legend of Legaia sports a fighting system that feels like a merger of Tekken and traditional turn-based combat. Upon entering battle, you are presented with the options of attack, item, magic, but the option is named after the raw Saru attached to the character, so for instance, Meta for Vaughn, and the last option is Spirit. After electing to attack, you are given the option to enter commands or allow it to automatically select your moves. I do not recommend this at all though. You're given the options High, Low, Arms, and Rasaru, and allowed to enter these in any combination you desire. These commands represent where you're attacking the foe. If you select Low on a flying monster, you'll miss. If you select Arms on a slender fiend, you will miss. This aspect really created strategic depth, at least early on. If you enter commands in specific orders, you unlock arts, which do quite a bit of damage and are all uniquely animated. You permanently unlock the art after you've entered the correct string or learned it from an NPC in the world. You must have the required amount of AP, which stands for art points, to perform the move, and the amount of AP used per move is determined by the strength and length of the combo. You gain AP by simply attacking, being attacked, or using the Spirit command, which foregoes an attack in order to take a defensive stance. This increases the character's chance to block an attack, bestows a significant portion of AP, and increases the length of the action bar, which allows the player to enter multiple arts in a turn. If you do not possess the necessary AP to perform a move, The character will simply perform the string of commands without executing the art, and will end up doing considerably less damage. Experimenting with combos is fun, for a bit. It can quickly become tedious and monotonous. Battles, even the easiest of them, tend to last much longer than they should, and this issue only increases as the game progresses and combos become longer and more elaborate. About halfway through the game, a pattern develops where the player simply uses spirit and selects the strongest art the next turn. There isn't much strategy after that outside of certain boss battles, which have a tendency to be very trying if the player isn't prepared or doesn't utilize the spirit function appropriately, as a lot of bosses have moves that will wipe the party if you don't use spirit effectively. While you will have to grind to keep up financially, and there are the occasional difficulty spikes, I really enjoyed the fighting system and the interactivity of it, despite it prolonging encounters. The animations are flashy and unique, and the character models in battle are strikingly different than on the world map. They are more fully realized and highly detailed comparatively. This also makes the powerful combinations more rewarding to witness. It is a creative and fun take on the traditional turn-based system. The other combat option is the spells you gain from killing certain Saru in the world. You gain that spell and can use it, and the more frequently you use it, the stronger it gets. Certain spells also gain effects, such as the early healing spell Vera gaining the ability to cure different status elements as it levels up. I was pleasantly surprised by this, as items that address these afflictions were a bit rare early in the game. Magic can and certainly does become quite potent late game. Its early strength is pulled back by high MP cost and a lack of restoring items. It's simply not sustainable to spam spells early, and why would it be in a game that emphasizes combination-based combat? Though careful and thoughtful use of it can make encounters much easier. My biggest frustration with this system is how obscenely long each summon is, and to make sure you hate it even more, they are unskippable. As if the battles weren't long enough, choosing to summon even the earliest, most simple spells delays the encounter even longer. It's near inexcusable, but again, I suspect the creators didn't anticipate a ton of magic usage given how dependent the player is on stringing together combos. It's a blast for sure, but it needed some definite tweaking. I haven't enjoyed just kicking back and leveling up like I did in this game in a long time. I can't help but praise innovation, and this game's fighting system, while maintaining and adhering to many core RPG elements, definitely thought outside of the box. It's worth experiencing, if for nothing more than the enormous string of attacks the player can use. While the character models in combat look superb and actually change armor and weapons depending on what you equip, which might not seem noteworthy now, but was a very nice touch then, the graphics outside of combat are quite different. The character models are disproportionate and reminiscent of the Final Fantasy VII super deformed style. It made me want to see the more proportional in-combat models all the time. While the landscapes are bland and unimpressive with an ever-present mist, I didn't mind this as it felt like a deliberate aesthetic choice to increase the sense of dread and hopelessness. The land really does feel isolated and bleak. It absolutely works given the structure and nature of the story. The battle sounds did a superb job of conveying the gruesome aspects of combat. However, the tracks outside of that were more often than not meant to set a tone or be less in your face than, say, Final Fantasy compositions. It's a subdued track that sometimes hits and unfortunately sometimes misses. And as an aside, one of the most moving tracks in the game is a direct lift from Alundra, so that was a bit disappointing. Given the direction of the story, I felt the composer, Michiru Oshima, could have done a bit more with this title, especially considering how truly accomplished and talented she is and was at the time of Legend of Legaia's release. I don't want to overstate this sentiment because it was far from bad, it just fell very short of what I anticipated. Legend of Legaia was a bit of a challenge for me to review. There were days that I'd get lost in it. Its combat system was fresh and creative, the atmosphere terrifying, and there was no shortage of minigames such as slot machines and fishing. It also rewards hardcore gamers with a plethora of late game content. On the other hand, I couldn't help but notice its shortcomings, inexcusably long battles, predictable plot points, and a musical score that left a lot to be desired. There were moments I understood why it didn't ascend to a higher status, and other play sessions that convinced me it belonged among the greats. It really is a game that will reward different players in different ways, while unfortunately reminding you why it didn't quite hit that next level. Still, I recommend the game to any RPG enthusiast. It was a passed over gem in its time. If you enjoyed the review, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. My Twitter is also located right below the video. This has been Andrew with High Level Reviews, and I appreciate you guys stopping by.